Welcome to today's deep dive. Today, we are going to travel back in time to New York City in 1854.
Oh, wow.
We'll be using a single issue of the New York Times from October 31st as our window to the past.
Cool.
It's going to be really interesting to kind of see what we can glean from this one issue.
It's just a snapshot, of course. But what's fascinating is how much we can kind of uncover about that era from just one day's worth of news advertisements.
Right.
And even little snippets of daily life.
So picture this. You're walking down a bustling New York City street. Horse-drawn carriages are clomping by.
Yeah.
There's maybe a hint of coal smoke in the air.
Right.
And in your hands, you've got this newspaper hot off the press.
Yeah.
You're not just reading the news, you're stepping right into the lives of New Yorkers from over 150 years ago.
Yeah, and as we dig into this newspaper together, we'll uncover stories that resonate across the centuries. Some things have changed dramatically, of course, but some things stay remarkably the same.
Okay, so first up, let's zoom out and look at the global stage.
Yeah.
The Crimean War is raging in Europe.
Oh, right.
And even across the Atlantic. New Yorkers are following the conflict closely.
Right.
The Times reports the fall of Sevastopol.
Wow.
A major Russian city.
Huge.
And you can sense the tension and uncertainty in the coverage.
This was a pivotal moment in the war, and the newspaper's editorials really dig into the U.S. government's handling of the situation.
Yeah.
Questioning America's role in the conflict. It's a reminder that even back then there were debates about isolationism versus interventionism, global involvement versus staying out of foreign entanglements.
Yeah, it's so interesting how these questions keep coming up again and again throughout history. It's like we're still grappling with the same fundamental issues on the world stage as they were back in 1854.
And this highlights the vital role of a free press. The New York Times was actively shaping public opinion, prompting debate about America's place in the world. It's a powerful example of how newspapers can hold those in power accountable.
Now, from international conflict, let's shift to local politics.
Okay.
There's this intriguing court case involving land fraud in Milwaukee that's making headlines.
Oh, wow.
It reveals this whole web of deceit with accusations of forged land deeds, shady deals, and missing funds.
This case really gives you a peek into the underbelly of the era and the potential for corruption. Even in seemingly mundane transactions, it makes you think about how some things never really change.
Yeah.
We still see these kinds of financial scandals play out today, don't we?
It's almost like we're destined to repeat these mistakes, even though we have all of history as our guide.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But looking back at cases like this can help us understand the patterns of behavior, the temptations that lead to corruption, and hopefully learn from the past, even if we don't always succeed.
So we've talked about global conflicts and local spandals. Now let's get into the everyday lives of these 19th century New Yorkers. The newspaper is packed with these amazing advertisements.
Cool.
They give you a glimpse into what people were buying, selling, and even dreaming of.
It's like a time capsule of consumer culture.
Yeah.
You see ads for everything from real estate to clothing to the latest gadgets.
Right.
It really brings the era to life.
For example, there's this ad for a splendid new residence.
Oh.
With all the modern conveniences.
Huh.
I'm kind of curious what modern conveniences meant back then. Indoor plumbing, maybe?
Perhaps. Or maybe just gaslighting and running water.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a reminder that what we consider modern is constantly evolving.
And then there are these quirky ads that really make you smile.
Okay.
Like this one that says, keep your feet dry for a whole $1.
Huh.
Apparently, comfortable footwear has always been a priority.
Absolutely. And it's not just footwear.
Yeah.
You see ads for cures for baldness.
Oh, wow.
Corsets that promise a tiny waist and even a contraption that claims to improve your posture.
Right.
It's fascinating to see how some of our anxieties and aspirations have remained remarkably consistent over time.
It's like peeking into the minds of these New Yorkers, seeing what they worried about, what they desired, and what they considered a good investment. Speaking of investments, there are also tons of job postings in the paper.
Oh, cool.
They're looking for music teachers,
Yeah.
governesses, even a professor of penmanship.
These job postings reveal a lot about the social hierarchy and the values of the time. For example, the need for governesses and music teachers suggests a certain level of affluence and a focus on education and refinement within certain social circles.
Right. And you also see ads for more practical jobs, like blacksmiths and carpenters.
Right.
It's a reminder that even in a bustling city like New York, people from all walks of life were needed to keep things running.
And of course, we can't forget about entertainment.
Right.
The newspaper has several announcements
for
theatrical productions, concerts, and lectures. But the one that really catches my eye is an advertisement for P.T. Barnum's American Museum.
Oh, yes, P.T. Barnum, the master showman.
Right.
His museum was famous for showcasing curiosities from around the world, everything from exotic animals to human oddities.
Barnum understood the power of spectacle,
Yeah.
and he tapped into something primal in human nature.
Right.
Our fascination with the strange and the unusual. It's interesting to compare this to our modern forms of entertainment.
It's like Barnum's museum was the 19th century equivalent of viral videos or reality TV. We're still drawn to the same kind of sensational content that offers a glimpse into worlds beyond our own.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder how our taste for entertainment will continue to evolve in the future. What will be the P.T. Barnum attractions of the 22nd century?
Well, that's something to ponder. But for now, let's stick with 1854. We've already uncovered so much about the era, from international conflicts to local scandals to everyday life and entertainment.
Yeah.
But there's still more to explore.
Indeed. This newspaper is like a treasure trove of information. And as we continue our deep dive, we'll unearth even more fascinating insights into this pivotal moment in history. So stay with us.
You know, as we're going through this newspaper, I keep coming back to this idea of truth and how it's presented and maybe even manipulated.
That's an astute observation, and it's something that's particularly relevant in the context of the Crimean War coverage.
Right. I mean, the newspaper's relying on reports from European sources, which might have their own biases and agendas.
Right.
So how can we be sure that what New Yorkers were reading was actually accurate?
That's a great question, and it highlights the challenge of discerning truth. Even back in 1854, imagine you're a New Yorker trying to make sense of a distant war, relying solely on information filtered through various channels.
Right.
You can see how easily misinformation or propaganda could spread.
It's a reminder that we always have to be critical consumers of information, no matter the source or the time period. And with the rise of the internet and social media, that challenge has only become more complex.
Absolutely. We're bombarded with information from all directions.
Right.
And it's up to us to sift through it all, evaluate the sources, and try to get as close to the truth as possible.
Now, speaking of truth and perspective, let's go back to that land fraud case in Milwaukee.
Okay.
It's fascinating how the newspaper presents the different sides of the story. It's like a courtroom drama unfolding right on the page.
It really is. You have these passionate arguments from the lawyers, accusations flying back and forth, evidence being presented and challenged.
Yeah.
It's a glimpse into the legal system of the time and how justice was sought.
What were some of the key arguments that the prosecution and the defense were making?
Well, the prosecution was trying to paint a picture of deliberate deception.
Okay.
They claimed that these individuals knew exactly what they were doing. They were forging documents, altering maps, and essentially stealing valuable land from the government.
Sounds pretty damning.
Yeah.
What did the defense have to say for themselves?
The defense argued that it was all a big misunderstanding, a case of sloppy paperwork rather than intentional fraud. They claimed that their clients were simply caught up in a web of bureaucratic confusion, and that the prosecution was blowing things way out of proportion.
So it's a classic case of he said, she said.
Right.
It's really up to the reader to decide who to believe.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I love about this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're not here to tell you what to think. We're simply presenting the evidence, the different perspectives, and inviting you to draw your own conclusions.
It's like we're jurors in this historical case, weighing the evidence and trying to figure out what really happened.
Right.
It's a fascinating exercise in critical thinking.
And it's a reminder that history is not always black and white.
Yeah.
There are often multiple perspectives and interpretations.
Right.
And it's up to us to grapple with the complexities and try to make sense of it all.
So we've covered truth manipulation, courtroom drama. Now let's lighten things up a bit and talk about something a little more frivolous.
Okay. Fun.
What were New Yorkers wearing back in 1854?
Well, the 1850s were a time of evolving styles. And the newspaper gives us some fascinating glimpses into the fashion trends of the day.
I noticed an ad for beautiful French corsets.
Oh, yeah.
It seems a cinched waist was all the rage back then. I can't imagine those were very comfortable.
Probably not. But it speaks to the power of fashion and how it can shape our perceptions of beauty and femininity. Even back then, women were willing to endure a certain amount of discomfort in the name of fashion.
And it wasn't just the women. The men were also concerned with their appearance.
Right.
There are ads for gentlemen's fine hats and elegant walking sticks. It seems looking dapper was a priority for everyone.
Absolutely. These ads remind us that fashion is not just about clothing. It's about self-expression, social signaling, and fitting in with the trends of the time.
Right.
It's a universal human desire to present ourselves in a certain way.
It's funny to think about how future generations will view our fashion choices. What will they think of our skinny jeans, athleisure wear, and those chunky dad sneakers?
Maybe they'll be amused. Maybe they'll be horrified.
Right.
Or maybe they'll even be inspired. Who knows? But it's a reminder that fashion is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And what's considered stylish today might be considered outdated or even ridiculous tomorrow.
So we've talked about fashion legal battles, truth, and perspective. What else can we glean from this 1854 newspaper?
Well, amidst all the serious news and captivating advertisements,
Yeah.
there are also these little human interest stories that really bring the era to life.
Oh, I love those. Give me an example.
There's a brief report about a lost dog. A small terrier answers to the name of Fido has gone missing, and the owner is offering a reward for his safe return.
Oh.
It's a simple story, but it reminds us that even in a bustling city like New York, people cared about their pets just as much as we do today.
It's those little details that really connect us to the past.
Right.
They remind us that people back then weren't so different from us. They had their worries, their joys, their everyday struggles and triumphs. It's almost like we're getting to know these people through the pages of this newspaper.
Exactly. It humanizes history and helps us see it not just as a collection of dates and events, but as a story of real people living their lives.
It's amazing how a single newspaper issue can transport us back in time.
Right.
And give us such a vivid glimpse into another era.
And we're not done yet. There's still more to explore in this treasure trove of information. So let's continue our deep dive and see what other fascinating nuggets we can unearth from this window to the past.
As we kind of get towards the end of our deep dive into this 1854 New York Times issue, I'm struck by how much it reveals about the anxieties and aspirations of the time.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? On one hand, you see all this excitement about progress, new technologies, the expansion of the railroad, the development of the telegraph.
Right.
It's a time of great optimism and a belief in human ingenuity.
But at the same time, there's this undercurrent of anxiety, almost a fear of the unknown.
Precisely. The Crimean War is raging in Europe.
Yeah.
A stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the destructive power of conflict.
Right. Even closer to home, the land fraud case highlights the potential for corruption and deceit to undermine even the most ambitious endeavors.
It's like they're standing on the cusp of a new era. Excited about the possibilities, but also wary of the potential pitfalls. It's a feeling that I think resonates with us today as we face our own technological advancements and global uncertainties.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We often think of history as this linear progression, but it's much more complex than that.
Yeah.
It's a tapestry of triumphs and setbacks, hopes and fears, and this newspaper captures that beautifully.
Now, amidst all the news about war and politics and even fashion, is there anything in this paper that gives us a glimpse into the spiritual or philosophical side of life in 1854?
There are a few intriguing clues scattered throughout the pages. For instance, there are several announcements for religious services representing a variety of denominations, Presbyterian, Baptist, Methodist.
It suggests a vibrant and diverse religious landscape in New York City at the time.
It makes you wonder what role faith played in the lives of these New Yorkers.
Yeah.
Did they find solace in religion amidst the uncertainties of the era? Did it provide a sense of community and purpose?
It's certainly possible. And there are also a few literary excerpts and poems sprinkled throughout the paper.
Oh, wow.
Hinting at a broader intellectual and cultural scene.
Can you give us an example?
One poem titled Ode to Autumn speaks of the beauty and melancholy of the changing seasons. It's a reminder that even amidst the hustle and bustle of city life, people still found time for reflection and contemplation of the natural world.
It's those little windows into the human spirit that make history so compelling. It's not just about dates and events. It's about the hopes, dreams, and fears that connect us across time.
Beautifully said. And as we wrap up our deep dive into this 1854 New York Times, I think it's worth reflecting on how future generations will view our own time. What stories will they tell about us? What will they find fascinating, amusing, or even shocking about our lives today?
It's a humbling thought, isn't it? Maybe they'll marvel at our technological advancements. Or shake their heads at our social media obsessions. Or perhaps they'll be drawn to the same timeless themes that we've uncovered in this newspaper. The quest for truth, the allure of progress, the enduring power of the human spirit.
One thing's for sure, history is never static. It's a constantly evolving narrative, and we're all part of it.
Thank you for joining us on this journey back in time. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of 1854 New York City.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And remember, history isn't just something we read about in textbooks. It's all around us, waiting to be discovered.
So keep exploring. Keep questioning and keep uncovering those fascinating stories that connect us to the past and illuminate our present.